I'm going to install Windows 10 in VirtualBox. The first thing I need to do, of course, is call up VirtualBox. And I'm in the VirtualBox Manager right now. You can see I have several machines here already, but I'm going to go ahead and click Machine, and then New. And this is going to be a Windows 10 Pro 64-bit trial. Now I'm going to put all that information here. I like to do that in these virtual machines so that I know exactly what I've got when I go back to it later. Where do I want this? Well, I do not want it in C users Roger VirtualBox VMs. I'm going to put it in D Documents, Virtual Machines, Masters, and VirtualBox. So that's where I'm going to put mine. This is Microsoft Windows, Windows 10 64-bit, so I will go ahead and click Next. Here it wants to know how much RAM I want to give my virtual machine when it's running, and it's given it 2 gigabytes here. I'm going to go ahead and bump that up to approximately 3, somewhere in there, because I have quite a bit of space on this particular computer, a little bit more than 3 there. That's pretty close. And I'll click Next. I do want to create a virtual hard disk now. I could create it later, but I will go ahead and let it create it now. What this means is it's going to create a file on my hard drive that will be where my virtual operating system lives. It will think that that file is the computer. I will go ahead and let it create that now. I'm going to go ahead and allow VDI, which is the VirtualBox virtual machine type. These others, this is a Windows type, and this one down here is for VMware Workstation. So if you want compatibility with the others, you might want to choose one of those, but I'm going to go ahead and choose VDI. This is going to be dynamically allocated. What this means is the size of the file that I give it will grow, so it'll be as small as it can be, so that it won't use up a whole, say I give it 50 gigabytes of space. I don't want a 50 gigabyte file there if I'm only using 10 or 15 of it. So by saying dynamically allocated, it will only use up what it needs to, and it will grow as it needs to grow. And sure enough, 50 gigabytes is what it's recommending. I am going to check up here and make sure that this is what I want. I want it in Masters, VirtualBox, Windows 10 Pro 64 Trial. That is the folder that it created so that the files can live in a folder that I can recognize. So that's very good. I will go ahead and say Create. And now it is ready to go. And here is the machine, although it has not been installed yet. At this point, there are some things that I can do to speed things up a little bit. I'm going to click Settings and go down to System. Now here's where you can see I gave it a little bit more than 3 gigabytes of RAM, but I can also give it more than one processor. Now I have 32 processors on this machine, and so I can give it maybe a couple of processors, and it will rob my physical machine, my host machine, of those processors while this machine is running. But this will help it to run a little bit faster. I could give it even more processors if I want to, but sometimes I run 3 or 4 or 5 machines at a time, so I will just give it a couple. If you are running maybe only a dual core, certainly you only want to give it 1 CPU. If you're running a quad core and you're only going to be running 1 machine at a time, you might want to give it 2. If you're going to be running more than 1 virtual machine at a time and you have a quad core, probably 1. If you have an 8 core, you might want to give it 2 or even 4. All right, so that will speed things up. You can only do that, by the way, when this machine is powered off. All right, I'll go ahead and click Start. And the next thing it's going to ask me is, where is the ISO file that is the representation of the DVD that I'm going to be installing from? So I will click this little folder icon, and here's the one I'm going to be using. This Windows 10 Pro 2004 means 2020 in the 4th month. So this is the the release of Windows 10 Pro that I'll be using. If this were not here, I could have clicked Add and then navigated to where that is. And in this case, it is right here in Virtual Machines Masters VirtualBox. I could select that like that, and that would populate it. But it's already populated because I already had it here. So I will just say choose and then start. And there it goes. It's going to fire up and install. Now I will be pausing the video during these long waits so we don't take up a lot of extra time. At this point, we need to choose what language, English, and the time and currency will be the English format, keyboard will be US keyboard. Next, I can either install, this is a clean install here, or repair. This is not a repair install. I'm going to be doing a clean install. Now at this point it wants the activation key, and I am not going to be activating this. This is a trial version, so I'm going to go ahead and say I don't have a product key. And I will choose Windows 10 Pro, 64-bit, which is what I want, and next. Now while this thing gets started, I do need to accept the license agreement. And custom, I'm not upgrading from an older version. I want a clean install, so I'm going to choose custom, and there's that 50 gigabyte drive that I gave it. All right. As it begins here, let me talk a little bit about that license key. You can just use a trial version, and you can use it virtually forever. There's really no reduction in functionality as you use it in the future. You will get down here in the lower right hand corner of your desktop a watermark that says this is an unactivated copy of Windows 10. But as far as I know, I can't really think of any functionality right now that will go away after the trial period. You can use this virtually forever. In fact, I know people who are using Windows 10 trial version at home as their home machine, and they have not activated it in months, and it's still running fine, and they're still using it for everything. So you can use the trial versions for classroom purposes without any loss of functionality, as far as I know. Okay, we're getting near the end of this now. It's installing updates, and that went real fast because I am using the latest version. If you're not installing the latest ISO, that will go significantly slower. It's going to go ahead and restart now, and then it will still take some time, so we'll have to pause the video again. There's the restart, and no, I don't want to boot from a CD or DVD, so I'll leave that alone. While this thing is finishing up here, there is something I'd like to show you, and that is up here under Machine and then Settings, and then down to Network. By default in VirtualBox, this will be installing to what they call NAT network. And what that means is that this Windows 10 will get its own IP address, but then it will communicate with the host machine and through the host machine's IP address to get out to the internet. Now, if I don't want it to be able to get out to the internet, let's say I have several machines like this. In this case, I've got two domain controllers and a client. Well, these are all set to internal network, which means they cannot get out to the internet, but they can talk to each other. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these right now because that's not the point of this video, but leave it on NAT if you want to be able to get to the internet with this machine. The screen has gone black, and I suspect it's about to do another reboot. Usually when the machine goes black like that and then it reboots, that typically is when the graphics driver is being installed. Okay, it wants to know what region we are in so that it can set up its calendar and clock. So I will go ahead and say yes, the United States in my case. And yes, I want the US style keyboard. No, I do not want to add a second keyboard. Now it's going to be setting up the network information, as you can see up at the top here. All right, personal use or an organization. If I were going to join this to a domain, I could use organization. But I'm going to be using this for personal use, so I'll click that. What it wants me to do now is to set up a Microsoft account, and when I log in, I would be logging into my Microsoft account. If I log into other Windows systems with my Microsoft account, then my settings and things like that, and history and so forth, would travel with me. In this case, this is just a virtual machine. I don't want it to be signed on to my Microsoft account, so I'm going to say offline account. This is just a reminder. Please, please, please join Microsoft account. Get it now, and I'm not going to say get it now. I'm going to limited experience because they're really trying to convince me to get that Microsoft account. So I will just say limited experience. My name, so that it can set up an account for me. And or even better, use an online account. Nope, I don't want to do that. And a password, okay. And or better, use an online account. Nope, they really want me to do that. Confirm my password. And now 3 security questions. And I will just put some fake information in here. So first pet's name, I'll just say Rover. And then next, second question, city I was born, I will say Chicago, which is a lie, that's not true. And then my third security question, childhood nickname, I'll just say Ace. Well, it wasn't really Ace, I'll guarantee that. Privacy settings. Now this is just a virtual machine. I don't really want it to do online speech recognition or find my device. I'm not going to lose my virtual machine. Ink and typing, no. Advertising ID, no. Location, I don't really care about whether it knows my location. I don't want to send diagnostic data to Microsoft. I don't want to tailor anything based on the other information here. So I will say no on all of those and accept that. Do more cross-device with activity history. No, I really don't care for it to know my activity history. I will say no. On the Cortana question, I will let it use Cortana because you might be doing labs or things where you need to have access to Cortana. So I will say accept. Now it's going to go ahead and set up my account. It's very nice that this machine kind of gets dark and light again because it lets us know that it hasn't frozen and it's still doing something. Alright, it brings up the Edge Explorer with a web page that has been built into Windows here. I don't need that on, and it is done. But one thing I want to mention before I leave you, and that is that it's a good idea to take snapshots frequently when you're about do something. So let's say that I was about to add a new user, say for a lab in class. Well, I would probably go to machine and then take snapshot, and I would call this snapshot before adding test user. And I'll take a snapshot of that so that at any given time that I mess something up and I want to go back, I can go back to that particular snapshot. So anything I do something that's going to change the system in some way, I would probably take a snapshot, and you can have a whole host of snapshots on there then that you can return to at a later time. That's always a good idea to do. Alright, let's just shut this thing down and we are done with this. There we go. A little bit slow out of the box, but then it will speed up as I use it and it starts filling out some of the cache. Shut down.